Assalamu alaikum. Today on Noran Academy, we discuss the scholar who turned magic into method, Jabir ibn Hayyan. If you benefit, please support by subscribing and sharing as a sadaqah.
For centuries, people looked at the world, the stuff all around us, right? Metals, liquids, powders, and they didn't see science. They saw mystery. They saw magic. The idea that you could change one substance into another, well, that wasn't a formula in a book. It was a secret, an art form wrapped up in myths. This was the age of alchemy.
So alchemy had these huge, spectacular promises. I mean, who wouldn't want to turn lead into gold, right? But here's the thing. What it actually delivered, most of the time, was just confusion. It was all grand claims, but with almost no reliable results to back them up. The world was just flooded with spells and secrets, but what it really desperately needed was a method, a real system.
Okay, so how did we get from all that mystical guesswork, to actual systematic science? It's a huge leap. Let's dive into that very transition, that move from magic to method.
And this right here, this really gets to the heart of the problem. Alchemy was built on pure guesswork. So if you actually succeeded at something, it was probably just a fluke, a lucky accident. No way you could replicate it. And without any kind of real measurement, experiments weren't just unreliable, they were often flat-out dangerous. We're talking explosions, poisonings, a real mess. What the world needed was a complete change, a system that you could actually test, measure, and critically repeat.
So who was going to provide that shift? Well, it was a scholar from the heart of the early Islamic world. And this, of course, brings us to Jabir ibn Hayyan, a man whose entire pursuit of truth was so deeply rooted in his faith and in the incredible scholarly tradition of his time.
And this quote, wow, it just perfectly captures his whole philosophy. Experiment without record is ignorance. Think about that. This one idea was absolutely revolutionary. He was basically saying, I don't care how successful your experiment seems. If you didn't write it down, if you didn't document it, it's just ignorance. For him, knowledge had to be captured, it had to be recorded, and it had to be shared.
So what he did was introduce this groundbreaking method, and it was all based on 3 simple pillars. First, careful observation. You had to actually watch what was happening. Second, precise measurements for every single ingredient. No more guesswork. And third, and this is key, written procedures. Why? So that other people could come along, test your work, and verify it for themselves. This was the real shift. This is how we moved from mysticism to an actual scientific process.
Okay, so with this new method in place, Jabir didn't just sit back and theorize about it. No, he built. He created a real, practical framework for this new science. He designed the tools, he created the classifications, he built a lasting foundation for the Ummah, and really for the whole world.
Just take a look at this, for example. The alembic. This thing was one of his most important inventions. It's a device he designed specifically for distillation, which let chemists separate and purify liquids with a kind of control that was just unimaginable before. It's an absolutely foundational tool. I mean, it's a direct ancestor of the equipment you'd find in a lab even today.
And he didn't just stop with one invention. Not at all. He brought real order to the complete chaos of the alchemist's workshop. He perfected key processes, things like crystallization, evaporation, and filtration. And then he took on this massive task of classifying the very substances he was working with. He gave the world its first systematic way to understand acids, alkalis, and salts. You see, he wasn't just doing experiments, he was literally writing the first chapter of the chemistry textbook.
So you have to ask, right, what was driving this incredible obsession with precision, with order? Well, to really understand Jabir, you have to understand the worldview that powered all his work. For him, science and faith weren't two separate things, not even close. His science was a direct expression of his faith.
You see, for Jabir, all of this meticulous work, it was an act of taqwa, of God consciousness. In Islam, we're taught that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything with perfect measure. So for him, studying the world with precision, that was a way to better understand and truly appreciate the absolute perfection of the Creator's work. His whole scientific framework, everything he did, was guided by these core Islamic principles. First, that knowledge is an amana, a sacred trust from God that has to be handled with care and honesty. Second, that to stay in ignorance when you have the ability to learn, well, that's a failing. And finally, that the universe itself is like a book filled with ayat, with signs, all pointing back to the Creator.
So when you put it all together, this unique combination of rigorous, scientific method and deep, profound faith, it created a legacy that would just echo down through the centuries. It didn't just transform one field of study, it transformed the very way humanity even approached the pursuit of knowledge itself.
And you can actually trace this influence so directly. It's incredible. It starts with him around 800 CE, right? Then, centuries later, his books get translated into Latin and start spreading all over Europe. So by the time you get to the 1700s, when modern chemistry is really starting to take shape, it's literally standing on the foundations that Jabir ibn Hayyan had laid almost 1,000 years before.
So, why does any of this matter to us today? Well, because his impact is literally everywhere you look. Think about the precision we need in medicine, the development of new materials for our phones, our cars, those huge industrial processes that shape our entire world, all of it. Every single bit relies on the chemical principles and the experimental rigor that he pioneered.
And this is such a powerful part of our heritage. You have to remember this. Your ancestors didn't look at complexity and get scared. They didn't run from it. They created the tools to organize it. Our tradition saw the pursuit of knowledge not as something separate from faith, but as an act of worship in and of itself.
So Jabir ibn Hayyan, he took chaos and he turned it into chemistry. And by doing that, he changed the world. So the question that leaves for us, for you and me, is this. When we're inspired by that legacy, a legacy of discipline, of precision, of inquiry driven by faith, what process in your own life will you choose to master now?
Presented and created by Norin Studio.